Hi, my name is James Carter. I'm 32 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Denver, Colorado. And while I'm just an average guy, I work as a corporate accountant. I'm not flashy, not the life of the party. And most days I come home, eat dinner, maybe watch a game or read and call it a night. Nothing too exciting. I've lived in the same small house for the last 5 years. My neighbors know me well enough to wave and smile, but we don't really hang out. I like the peace and predictability where I used to until a few days ago. Right next door lives Eliza Matthews. She's 36, strikingly beautiful with calm green eyes and this quiet strength about her. She was married to Mark, an older guy, maybe late 40s. We'd exchanged polite hellos over the years, but I never really knew them. They kept to themselves. Mark was the kind of guy who seemed like he was always in a hurry to be somewhere else. Eliza, on the other hand, had this calm presence that stayed with you even if you only spoke for 30 seconds. Last week, Mark died. Heart attack sudden. It was all over the neighborhood in hours. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't feel it was my place. But the next day, literally the day after they buried him, Eliza knocked on my door. It was around 4 in the afternoon. I was working from home, still wearing my hoodie and sweatpants. When I opened the door there, she was standing on my porch in a long black coat. Her hair was pulled back, eyes red and tired, and she held a small cup of something, maybe tea or coffee. "Hi, James," she said softly. "Do you mind if I come in for a minute?" Of course I let her in. I offered her a seat on the couch and made some tea. I didn't ask questions. I figured she'd talk when she was ready. She sat with her hands in her lap, just staring at the steam rising from the cup. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "It's too quiet next door," she whispered. "I thought I could handle it, but I don't want to be alone right now." I nodded. I told her she didn't have to explain. We just sat there for a bit, sipping tea, letting the silence fill the room. It wasn't awkward. It actually felt comfortable. After a while, she started talking about Mark, about how things weren't perfect, about how in the last couple of years they'd grown distant, how sometimes she felt more like his roommate than his wife. She wasn't crying. It was more like she was letting the truth leak out slowly, like water through a crack. She looked at me and said, "I know it sounds awful, but part of me feels like I've already grieved this before, like I lost him emotionally long before I lost him physically." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say much, just nodded, listened. That's all she seemed to need. Before she left, she looked around my living room and gave a soft smile. "It's warm here," she said. And then she was gone, just like that, back to her empty house. But something had changed for both of us. The morning after Eliza first came over, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I had emails to answer, spreadsheets to review, reports due by the end of the week, but all I could think about was her sitting on my couch, holding that cup of tea like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I don't know what it was, but something about the way she spoke, so honest, so raw, got under my skin. Not in a bad way, it just stayed with me. By noon, I hadn't eaten anything. I was just staring at the same document for 15 minutes when I heard another knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was again. No long coat this time. No makeup, just jeans, sneakers, and a gray hoodie that hung off her shoulders like she'd been wearing it for days. In her hands were two brown paper bags from Charlie's Deli, the sandwich place a few blocks away. "I figured you probably forgot to eat," she said with a half smile. "Almost did too. Thought I'd bring lunch if you don't mind." She didn't even wait for an answer, just stepped inside like it was something she'd done before. And for some reason, it felt right natural. We sat out on the back patio. The sky was heavy and gray, but the air was cool and fresh. She handed me a turkey and Swiss, and we both just sat there quietly unwrapping our sandwiches. We didn't speak at first, and I didn't force it. She took small bites, her eyes fixed on a line of trees behind the fence like she was somewhere far away in her mind. Eventually, she broke the silence. "It's strange," she said, her voice low. "I thought I'd feel more devastated, you know? I thought I'd wake up crying, screaming something, but instead I just feel empty, like I'm walking through someone else's life." I glanced at her, but she didn't look back at me. She kept her eyes on the trees. "I've had this knot in my chest for so long, James, even before Mark died. It's like the grief started years ago when things between us changed, when we stopped really seeing each other." I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I just sat there and listened. She sighed, then continued. "We used to be close. I really did love him. But then his work got more demanding. He traveled more, came home later, talked less. I started eating dinner alone even when he was in the same house. We slept in the same bed, but it felt like miles apart. She finally turned to me, her eyes slightly glassy but steady. You ever felt like you're slowly disappearing in your own home? I nodded, not because I'd been through the same thing, but because I understood the loneliness she was describing. I think everyone does in their own way. There was a pause, then she gave a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dump all that on you. I just didn't know who else to talk to. You don't have to apologize, I said. Sometimes you just need someone to sit with. She gave me a look, then grateful, maybe even a little surprised. For the next hour, we just talked. Not about Mark anymore, not about grief. We talked about little things, movies, our favorite coffee shops, how she once adopted a cat that ran away a week later. I told her about the time I accidentally sent a company-wide email with a typo in the subject line that said pubic announcement. She laughed hard at that one, and for the first time, she looked like someone who still had joy left in her. At one point, I felt her hand brush against mine on the patio table. It stayed there for a second, just long enough for both of us to notice, before she pulled it back gently. Her face changed, a little flicker of guilt maybe, or confusion. I should go, she said suddenly, standing up. This is probably too soon. I don't want you to think I'm using you as some kind of emotional crutch. I stood too. You're not, I mean that. She hesitated at the door. I just didn't want to be alone today. I nodded. Then don't be. Anytime you need to talk or not talk, I'm here, Mohim. There was something heavy in the silence that followed, like neither of us wanted to name what was happening, but we both felt it, a shift, a warmth, a closeness neither of us expected. She nodded slowly. Thanks, James. Really. Then she stepped outside and walked across the grass to her house. I watched her go. Her arms crossed over her chest hair, caught in the breeze. Something had changed. I couldn't explain it, but I knew we had crossed a line. Nothing physical had happened. No kiss, no embrace. But still something unspoken had started between us, and it wasn't going away. The day started off quietly. It was a cloudy morning, and the kind of heavy air that usually meant rain was hanging low outside. I sat at my kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of coffee in my hand, trying to get through some emails, but nothing was really landing. My mind was drifting constantly, circling back to Eliza. It wasn't just the fact that she came over again yesterday, it was how it felt when she was here. Her presence stayed with me longer than I expected. I couldn't get her words out of my head or the way she looked at me with this mix of loss and familiarity. And then there was that moment, just a small brush of her hand on the patio table, but it stuck with me like something much bigger. Sometime after lunch, I walked over to the window that faced her backyard. I wasn't checking to see if she was there, at least that's what I told myself. But there she was, standing near the edge of her porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was trying to hold something in. She looked so small, so unsure, like someone right on the edge of doing something they weren't sure they should. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then came that knock. I knew it would be her before I even opened the door. Eliza stood there in a navy blue sweater that hung just slightly off one shoulder and a pair of black leggings. No makeup, no jewelry, just her. She looked exhausted, but her eyes had this quiet intensity, like she'd been thinking hard about something. Can I come in? She asked softly. Yeah, I said, stepping aside without hesitation. She walked past me into the living room like she had the day before, but slower this time, more hesitant, like she was unsure she should be doing this. I didn't rush her. I just stood there for a second, watching her scan the room like it might give her some kind of answer. I wasn't planning to come, she said after a moment. I've been going back and forth for the past hour, but I didn't know where else to go. You don't need a reason, I said gently. Eliza moved toward the couch and sat down, curling up on one side like someone who needed to feel small for a while. I sat across from her, giving her space. It was quiet for a bit, just the distant hum outside and the ticking of the old wall clock. I don't know how to be alone, she said, finally breaking the silence. I went from living with my parents to living with Mark. That's all I've ever known. There was always someone. Now it's just me. I nodded slowly. It's a hard adjustment. She exhaled. The thing is, I felt alone for a long time even before he passed. It's like I was mourning the end of us before he was even gone. Her words were heavy, and I could tell she didn't say them lightly. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. That kind of loneliness is brutal, I said. It's different when someone's there physically, but emotionally not really with you. She looked at me, then directly her voice lowered. Do you think it's wrong that I don't feel guilty being here? I don't feel guilty talking to you like this so soon. I didn't rush to answer. I wanted to be careful with my words. No, I said, I don't think there's a clock for grief or a connection. Sometimes people come into our lives when we need them most. That doesn't make it wrong. Her eyes softened like she'd been holding her breath, waiting for me to say that. I just didn't expect to feel drawn to someone right now, she whispered. Neither did I. Then she looked down at her hands playing with the hem of her sleeve. I don't want to go back there tonight. Not because I'm running away, but because I can't sit in that house again. I feel like I'm going to suffocate. I could tell she meant it. It wasn't drama or exaggeration. It was a woman reaching the limit of what she could carry on her own. You don't have to explain, I said quietly. If you need a place to breathe, I'll make up the guest room. Eliza blinked, quickly fighting off tears. I didn't expect you to say that. You're not alone, Eliza. She nodded slowly, and for the first time that day, a tiny smile touched her lips. Later, I pulled clean sheets from the closet and fixed up the spare room while she sat in the living room, sipping the chamomile tea I made. We didn't talk much. The silence felt natural, comforting even. Before heading to bed, she came to me again. No drama, no rush, just a quiet closeness. Thank you, James, she said softly. For this, for not asking too many questions, for making me feel like a person again. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't rushed. It was human. Her head rested gently against my shoulder, and I held her with both arms steady and calm. It was the kind of hug you don't forget. When we finally let go, she whispered, "Good night," and then she disappeared down the hall into the guest room. I stood there for a moment alone in the quiet house, still feeling the warmth of her touch. And for the first time in a long while, I realized something had changed. I didn't sleep much that night, not because anything happened. Nothing did, but just I was aware. Aware that Eliza was in the room down the hall, aware of the weight she was carrying, aware that this wasn't just a neighbor crashing on my couch. This was a woman who just buried her husband, who now, for reasons she might not even fully understand, chose to spend the night in my home. The walls felt thinner, every sound seemed louder, and my thoughts wouldn't stop spinning. I kept thinking about how she hugged me. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was just deeply human, honest. That kind of hug you don't forget, not because of what it might mean, but because of how needed it felt. When the sky finally started to lighten, I got out of bed. The house was silent. I moved slowly, didn't want to wake her. I brewed a pot of coffee and stood by the kitchen window, holding the warm mug with both hands, watching the soft morning light spill over the backyard fence. About 20 minutes later, I heard her footsteps, soft, cautious, like she wasn't sure if she was intruding. She appeared in the hallway wrapped in a light gray blanket from the guest room. Her hair tousled, her expression calm but tired. Still beautiful, but in a different way now. More raw, more real. "Morning," she said quietly. "Hey," I said with a small smile. I made coffee. She nodded, stepped into the kitchen, and took the mug I handed her. We stood there for a while, not talking, just sipping. There was something about that silence. It wasn't awkward. It was restful. Eventually, she sat down at the table, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. She looked out the window for a long moment, then said, "I have no idea what I'm doing." I sat across from her. "I don't think you're supposed to, Eliza. You're figuring it out 1 minute at a time. That's enough." She nodded slowly. I keep thinking about how it felt yesterday, sitting here talking, breathing even. It felt like I got a tiny piece of myself back. Then she looked directly at me. Her eyes held something, not romance, not confusion, just depth. Mark and I, we weren't really a couple anymore. We lived together, we shared a life on paper, but emotionally we were two strangers occupying the same space. And I didn't even realize how empty I'd become until I left that house. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I could tell she needed to say this out loud. "I came here yesterday because I couldn't take the silence anymore. And now I don't want to go back, not yet." She stayed the entire day. We didn't make a plan. She just stayed. I made us some scrambled eggs and toast. She helped me sort laundry, laughing when she found a single pink sock that had somehow made it into my whites. At one point, we took a walk around the neighborhood, just a slow, casual loop. We didn't hold hands, but we walked close. Our arms touched once or twice, but neither of us said anything about it. The day moved gently. That evening, I made us both dinner, simple pasta, and a salad. Afterward, we ended up on the couch. She tucked her legs beneath her, holding a cup of tea in both hands. I sat beside her close, but not too close. A nature documentary played in the background, but we weren't really watching it. Then quietly she said, "It's strange. I feel peace here, like I'm allowed to just be." I haven't felt that in so long. I turned to her. "You don't have to rush anything. There's no script for this." She looked up at me. Her eyes searched mine for something, permission, maybe understanding. "Do you think it's wrong that I don't feel bad about being here?" she asked. "No," I said gently. "I think you're doing what you need. That's not wrong." Her head leaned against my shoulder. I let her rest there. My arm found its way around her. Not forceful, not suggestive, just steady. And then something shifted. She looked up at me, our faces closer than they had ever been. Her eyes lingered. I could feel her breath. And slowly, tentatively, she leaned in. Her lips met mine softly, carefully, like a question she wasn't sure she should ask. We kissed just once. Nothing rushed. No fireworks, just connection. Two people trying to feel something that wasn't pain. She pulled back. "I'm sorry, you don't have to be," I replied, my voice quiet. We didn't kiss again. She leaned into me, again this time resting against my chest, and we stayed like that for what felt like an hour. Quiet still, something had changed, and neither of us wanted to say it out loud. I think at the time I didn't really understand how deep the connection had grown between us until much later. In the beginning, we were both just two people figuring out how to live with the circumstances we'd been handed. But as the days passed, something about the simplicity of our shared moments, those morning coffees, the quiet evenings together, began to feel like something more, something real. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a gradual shift. After that quiet night when Eliza had come over and we shared that one kiss, gentle, hesitant, as though it were a question neither of us was sure we were ready to ask, we didn't immediately rush into anything. In fact, after that night, we stayed in our own spaces, both of us needing time to think, to process what had just happened. But it wasn't awkward. It was just natural. Neither of us were ready to dive into anything too quickly. We both needed to go at our own pace. For the next few days, Eliza stayed in her own house. She said she wasn't ready to leave it behind, and I understood. She needed to face it, clean it, sort through the memories that still lingered in the walls. But she came over every day just for coffee, for conversation, for comfort. The grief was still there, heavy on her heart, but there was a sense of quiet companionship growing between us, one that didn't require any grand gestures or overwhelming confessions. I'd make coffee in the mornings, and we'd sit on my couch, sipping it quietly, sharing her thoughts. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd laugh at something stupid I said, like when I spilled the coffee on the table and made some ridiculous attempt to clean it up, only making it worse. I found myself smiling more. Something about her presence brought me back to life slowly and steadily. And in turn, she was changing too. I could see it. Her eyes were no longer just filled with sorrow. They started to hold something else. She began to smile more, even if it was just a little at first. Her laughter came more freely. She started talking about the things she had forgotten, things she enjoyed before everything had fallen apart. I could see her finding herself again bit by bit. It wasn't a rushed process and it wasn't easy. But each moment, each day we spent together, I could tell that she was healing. Not completely, grief doesn't work like that, but she was learning to live with it. And as time went on, I realized that I was learning how to do the same. Then one Saturday, about a month later, she invited me over to her house for dinner. I hadn't been there since that first night, and I could feel a knot of nerves tighten in my stomach. Her house, after all, was where it all started, the place she had lost, so much the place where her husband had once walked through the front door every evening. But she had asked me over, and this time it felt different. It felt like a step forward. I brought a bottle of wine. She cooked a simple dinner pasta, something light but full of comfort. We ate outside on her back patio as the sun dipped below the horizon. The evening air was cool, the kind of evening where you can just sit back and enjoy the stillness of the world around you. We didn't talk much during dinner. We didn't need to. The conversation was comfortable, like we had been doing this for years. There was no pressure, no expectation, just the soft sound of clinking forks, the quiet hum of a nearby street, and the occasional glance at each other when one of us said something funny. As the night stretched on, the sky darkened, and the soft light from the patio lamps cast a gentle glow between us. That's when she looked at me, a look that was different from before. It wasn't sadness in her eyes anymore, or uncertainty. It was something more steady, something more certain. "I think I'm ready," she said, breaking the quiet. Ready for what I asked, unsure where this was going. Ready to let myself move forward. I've been stuck for so long, Daniel and I didn't know how to get out of it. But when I'm with you, I feel like I can, not because of you exactly, but because you've helped me see that it's okay to move on, that I don't have to be defined by what I lost. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't say anything at first. I just reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. It felt right natural. I didn't need to say anything. She knew I understood. I knew too. She smiled, then a real open smile, and I realized just how far she had come in such a short time. This wasn't just about her getting over the past anymore. It was about her finding something new, something unexpected, but something good. "I don't need to rush into anything," she continued, "but when I picture a future, you're in it, and that means something." It was my turn to smile this time with a bit of nervousness mixed in. "I don't need to rush either," I said softly. "We'll take it slow, but I want to be there with you, Eliza. I think we both deserve that." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was full of understanding, no more questions, just a shared certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. From that point on, things were different. We didn't immediately jump into a whirlwind romance. We didn't need to. We took our time. We still spent quiet mornings together and long evenings talking or doing little things around the house. We enjoyed the simplicity of companionship. And as the days passed, we found ourselves leaning on each other more and more. We didn't rush, but slowly we both realized we had found something real, something worth holding on to. A few months later, after countless dinners and quiet nights, I found myself waking up next to her every day. It wasn't the loud, chaotic kind of love you read about in novels, but it was the kind that felt steady and true. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the small things, the shared moments, the quiet support. I was happy, and so was she. And that's how I knew it was the right kind of ending, the kind where both of us found a way to move forward, not forgetting the past, but not letting it define us either. And just like that, it wasn't just a story about grief anymore. It was a story about healing, about second chances. This story, shared through the Eva's Story channel, is a deeply moving narrative that captures the quiet beauty of human connection amid grief and healing. As a reader, I was immediately drawn into James Carter's world, an unassuming accountant whose predictable life takes an unexpected turn with the arrival of his neighbor, Eliza Matthews. The story's strength lies in its understated authenticity, portraying two people navigating loss and loneliness with raw honesty and tenderness. Eliza's vulnerability, coupled with James's patient, empathetic presence, creates a bond that feels both fragile and profound. The gradual progression of their relationship, from shared silences over tea to a tentative kiss, and eventually a steady companionship, is portrayed with such care that it resonates deeply. The narrative doesn't shy away from the complexities of Eliza's grief or the moral questions surrounding their growing closeness so soon after her husband's death. Instead, it embraces these nuances, inviting readers to reflect on the unpredictable nature of healing and connection. What stands out most is the story's emphasis on the small, everyday moments. Coffee in the morning, a walk around the neighborhood, a shared laugh over a typo that build a foundation for something real and lasting. It's a reminder that love and healing often emerge in the quiet spaces, not through grand gestures, but through presence and understanding. This story leaves a lasting impression, offering hope that even in the wake of loss, second chances are possible when two people choose to move forward one gentle step at a time.